everyone. Welcome to the Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and today I have a special guest, returning guest. He's an author, and he has a book out right now that I can't wait to talk about. And it's called A Reviewer's Guide to Writing Book Reviews and Getting Paid for them. I have with us. Oh, you want to show us the cover?
Absolutely. I just so happen to have it right here.
And I have with us my man, Rick Hipson.
Yes.
Rick, welcome back to the Horror Room, I should say.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. I feel like, I'm starting to wear this chair in pretty good now.
I know, right? I know. So listen, this is an amazing book, but tell my audience a little bit about it.
Yeah, no, sure. And thanks again for having me back on here. I really, really appreciate that, Travis.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, so my book is essentially just like that. There's no, no bells and whistles in the title. It's exactly as advertised. It is a book reviewer's guide. I'm the book reviewer. It's my guide to how to write book reviews. And if you so choose to turn it into some sort of side hustle, certainly not a get-rich-quick scheme. That's not going to happen. Get-poor-slow scheme, maybe. But if you want to get paid a little bit of money while you're doing that, this book is going to help you do that. So I essentially wrote it based on everything that I was seeing. I've seen in so many different forums that I've belonged to, Books of Horror, that's a popular one. Several other ones where folks would often respond to pictures of arcs that I would maybe brag about, or other folks would brag about, and say, how do I get me one of those? I really wish I had one. I wish I was better at book reviews so I could maybe get one of these cool arcs before the rest of the world gets to see them. So I started putting two and two together, and I thought, well, I've been doing this for a long time. I know how to get me one of these books. Maybe I can help other people get some of that too. And that's sort of what spurred me to write a book about writing book reviews for the folks that want to learn how to get them some of those arcs and write book reviews.
And that's something I was talking to you in the pre-interview. That's something that I was looking at doing next year because I'm doing movie reviews right now. But I read tons, and I interview a lot of horror authors, and I read tons of books, and I'm like, boy, yes, it's great leaving a review. By the way, leave a review on Amazon or Godless or wherever you get your books, because that definitely helps authors.
It really does.
But like to hear more people actually talk, especially about indie horror authors, talk about their books and praise them. That's something. But that's something that I would love to do, and a lot of people would love to do. But but what are some of the strategies? Because I'm assuming doing a movie review is a little different than a book review.
Certainly a little bit. I think that again, we talked about this a little bit. There's a ton of similarities, and I certainly think that. Obviously, I'm going to say any review you do, you can review cars and you should buy this book. Maybe not so much, but certainly there's a lot of parallels with writing book reviews and writing movie reviews. Obviously, like we talked a little bit about before we hit the magic record button, of course, with a movie, you're going to talk about different things that you're just not going to need to worry about with a book as far as like lighting and maybe some more of the technical aspects of what it takes to make a movie look good and sound good on the screen as well. Whereas with a book, you're going to be more inclined to want to talk about the plot of the story, what the author does to maybe keep your attention, what they do to make you want to read more of that particular author. Sorry, pardon my cat.
It's fine.
Now that we're on the air, it's all about her. And at least you're getting that end of her, so that's a plus. It's a good day when you don't get the other end. But yeah, and I think that those are certainly some of the more things you'll focus on more when you're doing a book review as opposed to, say, a movie review. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question.
I think you're doing a decent job of. You're doing a decent job as well. Question, but like one of the things that like as a book reader and as well as a movie reader is character development. That's something that's so important. That's something that like for movies and books that lose points. If you do not develop your characters well, I don't, especially when it comes to horror, if I don't care about the character's fates, it's kind of pointless.
No, 100%. You have to care about those characters because it could I mean, I find even, and that's a really a lot of what I put into with the book reviews as well, is that, of course, as opposed to a movie where you maybe have, well, unless it's a Peter Jackson movie and you've got, you know,
Yeah.
10 years to tell the story. But when it's obviously a book and it's more condensed, whether it is a novella or, I mean, even a short story or, you know, a full length novel, like you said, you know, character development is so important. And I think it's important to be able to try to get that across when you're describing a book in a book review, as well as talking about how that worked and whether or not we cared about the characters. And I think it's actually really interesting you mentioned that, because in a sense, when at least my main goal is that when I'm doing a book review, I want you to care about the number one character that I'm discussing, which in this case is the book. You know, when you think about the book is of course the big all-encompassing character. Then, of course, beneath that, you have all these other little things going on, which, of course, are the characters inside of the book. I don't want to give too much of it away, because I want you to think, oh, I guess I don't need to read that book now. I know everything there is to know about. And I guess this is maybe an answer to your first question as well, that when I'm writing the book reviews, I think that's so important, and so important for me as somebody that likes to read book reviews as well, is to care enough about the book and whether or not I think it's going to be for me, without thinking that I know everything about that book. And yeah, no, I think that's super important in any kind of review, is to make sure that people care about the characters without giving too much of those characters away.
Now, how important when it comes to a book review is it to, get that reviewed as soon as possible? Like if a book is about to come out or it's in the early stages, how important is to get that reviewed as soon as possible?
Thank you. No, that's a really, really good question, because one of my, I'm not going to call it a pet peeve, but one of the instances that I find myself most frustrated with the book review is, let's just say, for example, somebody has a great book that they put out. Maybe it's 1,000 pages. It just came out, say, yesterday, and then that author says, "Hey, Rick, I got this great book. I think you're going to absolutely love it. Can you review it for?" I'm going to say Rue Morgue, because they're one of the magazines that I tend to review the most for. So can you pitch this to Rue Morgue? And I just have to do a head shake and think, I wish we had this conversation 3 or 4 months ago, even, because there's no way I'm going to do this, because and I think that most periodical magazines are like this, whether they come out every month, every other month, every quarter, season, what have you, is that once you pitch that to them, any given day, that magazine or that periodical is already 2 issues ahead, because they have to be. So by the time somebody pitches me that, it sucks for them, because if it's, even if it's the book just dropped today or a month from now, there's no way I'm going to be able to get that out fast enough. Now, that said, I could certainly pitch it to an online magazine or to an online publication, and that's generally okay. But I think, really, to answer your question, I think it's important to get it as soon as possible, really, because I think with any kind of reviews, and we see it all the time, I think YouTube is a perfect example. Being first makes all the difference in the world.
Yes.
So because you want yours to sort of be the, I guess, the most authoritative voice on that, and how can you be the most authoritative voice on a book or on a movie if you're the 100th person in line and everybody's already done all this? So they're probably not going to listen to you unless you've maybe already built up an audience. People love what you have to say, and you just happen to be late that particular month. They're going to be, oh, I wonder what he says compared to all the other 20 reviews that I've already listened to. So I think for 2 reasons it's super important, so that you can be that authoritative voice, you can be first, and also the earlier that you can have a chance to review the book, you're going to have a lot more opportunity in where you can place that book, which is good for you, the publisher, as well as the author.
And that's 100% agreed. And that's one of the reasons I stopped reviewing mainstream horror movies, or the ones that come out of the theater, because I would literally have to get there Thursday night. I mean, the last one I did was Scream 6, and I went to see it opening night on a Thursday, late at night, and then I had to rush home and get that review up. But at the same time, there was 1,000 other reviewers that had their reviews up that saw it before me, and I'm like, and it's you have to get that review up as soon as possible, and that's can be nerve wracking.
It is, and and depending on the movie you're reviewing too, some studios are so. I mean, I guess there's really no nice way of saying it. They're extremely stingy and extremely buttoned up when it comes to even releasing the screeners. Perfect example is the upcoming movie from Robert Eggers, Nosferatu. I would love to do that rumor guy. She did a spread on that about a month ago. So again, kind of goes to show how far ahead they're already thinking. They're out there to be being first on this. But I got in touch with Universal. I've reviewed some of their stuff before, and they are literally not giving away any screeners whatsoever. They've got 2 physical screens. One's in Los Angeles, one's in New York. I'm in Ontario, Canada. That's not going to happen. And it was interesting because that screener must have just happened today, I'm guessing, for last night, because I actually just watched somebody who did actually cover that movie. And it's like, oh, okay, well, I know where you just were recently. You're either in New York or you're in LA, because that's the only way of doing that. And I know you can see above me here, there's I printed an article I did on the last voyage of the Demeter. They didn't give away, again, a screener until about 3 days before the movie. Obviously, that's not going to work for publication. It's already 2 issues ahead of itself. So I essentially went to that completely blind and just asked them why I should like their movie, but haven't been able to see it. So it's automatic. They're taking a lot of options away from it by doing that. But it's just the nature of the beast. It's not being a movie reviewer.
Now this is something that's been tough for me. I've met a lot of friends in the indie horror realm, and a lot of them ask me to do a review for their movie. How hard is it to give that person a bad review?
Oh man, that is a good question. It's really hard, especially like you said, and I think certainly when you're dealing with things from an indie standpoint, whether it's a independent filmmaker or it's a small press author that's maybe not a huge name, they've got a small following, or they're maybe just starting out, it's their debut book. God forbid you sort of stick a pin in it for them, and that's kind of it. You don't want to do that, but at the same time, you got to be honest. I mean, that's probably one of the biggest questions, and that's one that I knew I had to cover that topic in the book, and I did. I certainly invested a section of this book on bad reviews. Is what do you do with that? And I think when it comes down to that, you just have to be honest, whether it's a friend or not, or there's something you just didn't like. So I think that it's important to talk about why it was a bad thing. What I've done for that is I tend to focus primarily on the good stuff about that. Maybe I've just been really lucky, or maybe I'm blindly naive and I just don't realize that most of the stuff that I've covered, I can always find some good stuff in it, thankfully. Even if there's some stuff I've watched where I'm like, oh, that was a terrible scene, and that just took me right out of the movie, or that didn't work for me at all, but all this other stuff is really good, so I might sort of jump into it and say, yeah, this part didn't work really well for me, or if you're this type of a viewer, this type of a reader, you might not enjoy this part of it, but the saving grace is there's all this other good stuff in there, and then I'll sort of focus on the good stuff. I mean, I can give you an example of one book that I read, and I just thought, this is going to be tough. I read a book about if he's watching this, he's going to know exactly what I'm talking about, which is him, but I'm not going to mention names, but I reviewed a bad joke book, and it was in that vein. I happen to know the guy pretty well, and I know his personality, that he knows a lot of these are kind of, very groan-inducing, and frankly, getting through the book was a chore. It was exhausting, and not in a good, hey, I just climbed Mount Everest, I feel amazed, and it was, holy crap, I feel like I've just climbed Mount Everest, and I've only taken a few first steps here. kind of thing. So that was a bit tough, but I had to recognize that because if I just gloated about how amazing this book is, it's fantastic. Somebody that might be, most of the people that are reading this might think, the hell is he smoking? What is he thinking
Yeah.
about? I'm never trusting that reviewer again. Oh, good, he's reviewed a book in this magazine. Great, that just saved me time for having to read that. I'll go on to the next thing. So I have to recognize that, which I did in my review. I think I made a terrible joke myself and referencing about how great, what do you do when you cross this book with a whole bunch of stuff? It's like death by 1,000 puns. But there were some good things in it, and I focus on that. So I think to answer your question, you have to be honest. Saying that the book's not for you and that it's probably better off to get somebody else to review it, no is always an option, and it should be an acceptable and respected one. Whether it's received that way, that's not your responsibility. If somebody's like, "Oh, I thought we were friends," that's
Yes.
the responsibility and their reaction that falls on them. But as far as looking at things from being honest, being ethical, and really being professional about it, it's okay to tell somebody it's not for you. But if you review it, there's something about it that doesn't work for you, you're doing everybody a disservice by not mentioning it. But you probably shouldn't focus on it.
Because I mean, your credibility as a reviewer is the most important thing. I mean, once you lose your credibility, and cause you like, I have a friend who he actually watches the show, and honestly, I'm not gonna say his name, but like he goes to the movie theaters a lot, and like, and every movie that he says is like, "Oh my god, this was a great movie." And he does a Facebook like quick thing. "This was the greatest movie ever. This was the greatest movie ever." It's every single movie, but I got to the point where I'm like, not every movie can be the greatest movie ever, and like, and I'm not saying every movie has to be horrible, but like when you say this is the greatest thing ever, this is great, or this is so great, your credibility at that point,
right,
and it suffers.
Yeah, no, 100% agree with that. And I mean, I think it's important to recognize recency bias as well. Certainly, if it's a friend of yours, it might be, I didn't realize my friend has some talent. Well, he has a lot of great talent, but he really sucked at executing this part of this movie or this book. You still got to call him out on that. I mean, I remember, and you hate to lose opportunities as well. So you might think, like, this movie a bad review, this producer or this this production company is not going to want to deal with me ever again. I remember I got a chance to review In a Violent Nature, and it was one of the few podcast or YouTube reviews that I did, but I want to try to do a little more of that. So I thought, cool, this would be a good jumping off point. I'm really excited to see this one, and it'd be kind of cool to see it ahead of the world. So I saw it, and it didn't 100% work for me, and I really wanted it to. I mean, it was an independent movie. It broke the barriers. It got on the big screen. It's from my backyard in Canada, actually not that far from me. I wanted to love this movie, and there's a lot to love, but put it this way, my title for the movie was In a Violent Slumber, because to me it was just, I could go for a walk and enjoy nature without having to do it sitting on my ass watching a movie that I'm wondering when stuff gonna happen. But this guy just freaking killed somebody already. And I mean, the yoga scene, I think it's gonna make for a great YouTube viral video. Take that out of the movie, and it's
I felt the same way, and I don't like bashing indie. I don't like the bashing indie creators, right?
Right.
But like, especially the ones who get to the big screen. But like, that is one of those movies I saw it in a theater, and I was nodding off. I was like, okay, where's this going? And I've heard so many other indie. I've heard so many indie filmmakers saying this is the greatest movie ever. This is the greatest movie ever. But I think, so I have a question. Do you think when it comes to indie horror, do you think other indie horror creators are afraid to say anything negative about each other?
That's a good question. Well, I'm going to go ahead and say, yeah, I think so, because, and I think it's with very good intentions, because I think that in any independent pool of, insert whatever genre, media, what have you, thing. I think that it's so community driven, and it can feel like such a lonely friggin' place to be, that I think without something like, certainly with films, with writing, I think it's kind of the same way too, but I think even more so with films, because it's, even an independent film, it's so collaborative, unless you're doing some single guy lost in the woods and you're doing a found footage on your cell phone or something, I suppose. But I think that it really is community. It's so community driven that you would hate to, to piss on any aspect of that community whatsoever, worried that you're going to shun that community away, or that you might be shunned out of that community, or shun somebody else from that community, when you realize how important it is to be uplifting, to encourage everybody else. No, I can't really give you any good examples of that, because I'm not sure that I've really come across any that I can think of. Whether that means there's a lot of it going on, there's none of it going on. I'm sure there's a lot of it going on. But I would think so. I would think that that would be really tough to do that, because you don't want to crap on your your fellow independent guy, where you want to embrace everybody, even if maybe somebody you're bracing is maybe not the best at what they do, but we can still embrace their effort, and the fact that they're spinning it as best that they can, whether or not the ultimate effect of that is, or the result is good.
Now, right now, there's many platforms that you can do reviews on, book reviews. There's YouTube, like we're on right now. There's podcasts. There's writing. For someone who's thinking about, I'm going to jump into doing book reviews, what do you think is the best platform to start making money?
Man, you're asking me some good questions here. So I'm going to say whatever's most accessible to you, really. I mean, even if you feel most at ease and most natural writing it out and posting it on, I was going to say a blog, but frankly, I feel like the old man on the on the platforms. I don't know if blogs are even really a thing anymore. Do people? I guess they do on Substack, or for those that hate Substack, whatever newsletter platform you're a part of, or whatever, Patreon, what have you. If you find that you're most at ease writing your own thoughts on paper and then putting it out there for the public to see, if you're the kind of person where you've got a cell phone basically attached like it's an appendage, by all means, hit record, do a video, post it on TikTok, YouTube, whatever. I just think just get started wherever. Do all those things. By all means, write on a piece of paper and put it on your newsletter, and then read it out on your cell phone and throw it up on TikTok, throw it up on Twitter, X, whatever they're calling themselves, throw it on YouTube. Hit up any publication that you're maybe familiar with. There's so many of them out there, some that pay, some that don't, what have you, and say, hey, I just wrote this review. Would you be interested in it? Whatever's going to help you get there quicker and get there faster with the least amount of barriers, go for it. If you don't know what those are, maybe you're somebody like, I just don't know what to do at all, then make Google your friend and put in book reviews or movie reviews and see what comes up. Chances are the most popular probably going to come up first. Maybe start there. So I just think just get started no matter what. If it's something you want to do, you're going to keep doing it, and you might try 10 different places and they might all go up in flames, but keep trying. Maybe the 20th one will be the one where you'll get some success, where you'll get some cool engagement on it, or you might get it to a publisher, whether they pay or not, that you get a good result from, and you get to call yourself now a published reviewer. Just do it. Whatever's the least barrier of entry for you.
And when it comes to when it comes to horror book reviews, I feel like there's not enough reviewers out there. I feel like everybody's doing movies. Do you agree?
Yeah, and I can appreciate why, and it's kind of the reason why. It's funny that you and I are having this conversation because I haven't voiced this publicly, so I guess if I do it now, that will be the first time I've voiced this publicly. I've told a few, close people to me that, and I'm going to sound like a complete hypocrite, and it's an absolute contradiction of the fact that I just wrote this, and I want everybody to buy it because I think it's awesome and super helpful. And it was helpful for me to kind of solidify some of the things that I do and why I do them. So it's a great experience for me, and I think so far from the reviews, it's been a great experience for those that have enjoyed the book so far. But I'm planning on taking a book reviewing hiatus come the new year to focus on some other projects, which feels completely contradictory, you know, to me for that. But I think the reason a lot of people are probably more attuned to going after the movie reviews is because I mean they're just so much more popular. I mean you're never going unless you're a Stephen King or a VC Andrews or a Dean Koontz or any one of those A-list authors that are filling up the shelves almost to the point of annoying because that's all you see when you walk into a thing. If you're going to die by a book avalanche, chances are you're going to look up and see a Stephen King cover. It's the last thing you might ever see. But I think that the movie industry is just so much bigger. There's a lot more money to be had at it. And I think as a result of that, if you're reviewing, say, a movie on YouTube versus a book on YouTube, and this has been my experience as well, a lot more people are going to flock to that. Just because I think it's a lot more accessible. And I always thought about that too. I thought, well, what if they had a theater that was opened up to a person who was absolutely just killing it? Maybe they're an actor and they're the best reader in the whole world, and they're just sitting up there and they're reading a book. How many people are going to be in that theater versus, next door you have a movie playing? You're probably going to get that movie theater or the movie filled up first because it's just a much more accessible, easier venue of entertainment. So I think that's probably why more people want to get into movies. Plus, I also think that when you see a lot of the publishers too, especially some of the professional big magazines such as Rumor, Fangoria, I was going to say Cemetery Dance, but they're fairly sporadic and they're fantastic literary magazines. So I think you're going to see a whole lot of any movie stuff in there. So I probably should have not mentioned them. But Dark Side, Scream Magazine. There's a reason that the majority of their pages are dedicated to movie stuff because the studios have a bigger budget. They're paying for advertisements, and it's just something that's just a lot more wider reaching than a book. So they're more inclined to say, "Oh, you just talked to Robert Eggers, and you just did a whole interview on this guy, and nobody else is banging their door down. Yeah, absolutely right for us." As opposed to, "Oh, cool, you've got a book review. Yeah, I guess that's okay. We'll dedicate a small space for that. We'll pay you $40 for it, cool." And then sort of move on. So I think there's just a lot more money and a lot more eyeballs and a lot more invested interest in a movie than a book. I don't even know if I should preface that by saying unfortunately, because it's just the way it is.
Yes, because I mean, like I said, I was contemplating, doing a book review, but I agree with you when it comes, but also when it comes to a movie, you can watch a movie and be done with it in an hour and a half.
Exactly. Yeah.
So you can pump out movie reviews, boom, boom, boom. A book, listen, I got stacks of books over here on my bookshelf that I'm waiting to get to. It takes me probably a good month to get through one book.
Yeah.
So at that point, I'm doing one book review a month, which might not be as profitable as if I can do 4 movie reviews in a month.
Nailed it, absolutely. And sounds like you and I are sort of in the same, no pun intended, but sort of on the same page as far as that goes, because I have the worst trait as a book reviewer, which is that I read extremely slow. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I had a good friend of mine, again, I'm not going to say his name because he might be watching this. I hope he's watching this. He's watching this. Hey, how you doing? Sorry I didn't review your book. But the sucker was 1,000 pages. This would have taken me at least a month or two to read, and that's hitting it hard. I mean, I love novellas because I can generally get through a novella maybe a week or two. But that's just not profitable for most book publishers. So they like a good thick sized book so they can make the most money off of it, kind of thing. So, and for something like that, it just takes up so much time. That's the reason I'm going to go on a hiatus. I'm still going to obviously keep reading, and I think that no matter what, I'm probably going to review books that I do, but I might just post them up in I don't know, a TikTok video or YouTube video or something, as opposed to pitching it to Mark and saying, "Hey, I've got this book lined up. What do you say for that?" I think the book reviews that I do have lined up is going to take me to about the March issue, so it's going to look like I'm still reviewing books, but really, I'm cutting it off after the new year,
and
for the time being.
Yes, and what I was showing you there, what I did when come out my movie reviews, I have a little book that I go through my pros, my cons, the plot, boom, boom, boom.
Yeah,
I feel like if I was doing book reviews, which with book reviews, you're going to need to be writing a lot of stuff throughout the book. By the way, you have a notebook specifically for that.
I do, and what a coincidence! I also have that here. So this little guy, it is available through Amazon. So I publish it through KDP as well. So it's exactly like that. I'm a very literal person. So I put in your own words. Obviously, there are newer words if you're writing it, but the idea is that it's very personalized. Who wants a boring notebook? 150 pages. Neat little section here too, so you put your name, your subject, what have you. So if you like this so much you buy 10 of them, you'll be able to categorize it, know which one is which. And then just inside it, real simple. Some neat little graphics as well that you can write over top of if you so desire. And yeah, that's it. What's the point of reading an awesome book about writing book reviews if you don't have anywhere to write them?
Exactly. Because reading a book, like if you read it like I like Rick and I do, it takes us a month.
Exactly.
You can forget shit in that time span and to completely miss good points in your review.
Yeah, and it's funny because there's some books that I can notice them. I hope that nobody else notices them, but I can certainly tell when I write a book review, maybe I read a book and it's just so busy, so many different projects going on, life, etc. And there's been times where I've read a book and then I haven't reviewed it for maybe another month or two after I've read the book. And I don't recommend that, by the way. But I like to think that I've done this long enough that I can pull it off. Because I read so slow, I guess I really soak in everything, so I'm pretty good at recalling what the book was all about, how I felt about it. But having a notebook handy, as obviously Travis, because you've got a great notebook that you showed me as well for doing your movie reviews, it really helps to write stuff down in the moment because there's nothing like that pure raw emotion of what you felt about when something just resonated with you, when your favorite character died, or this incredible thing happened, or something was like, holy crap, that's me, or whatever. You can write that down and catch yourself in the moment. And I think that comes across in a good book review too, or a movie review, any review.
There's been reviews there's been movies that I watched to do a review on that never got a review video, and it's because I didn't write anything down. And then like weeks went by, and I was like, "What the hell was the movie about?" and I was like, "I don't have another 2 hours to sit and watch this movie again," Yeah. And so it just never gets a review, unfortunately. So yes, you gotta have a moment to write these notes down to keep key topics in your book or movie review.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Now, Rick, what is one book that you have read and reviewed that most people don't know about that they should know about recently?
Oh, man. You're firing all the cylinders here. Ask me the tough questions. One that I've reviewed recently. I think one that I think is going to fall under the radar. And, going back to the whole thing of maybe it's recency bias, so everybody thinks that what they read last is awesome. I'm going to use my own recency bias and talk about the very last book that I reviewed. which is going to go into a future issue. Actually, I think the next issue of the run-off. Yeah, I think the next issue. Yeah, January. Yeah, January issue of Rumor. It's by 1 second. Let me see if I actually have it handy. I might not, because this is the one that I didn't think you were going to ask me about. I don't have it here, but it is called No Fair Maidens from Earth to Mars, and it's by Rowan Hill. So she is a. It's kind of funny because when I did gave a shout out to her, right, I said that she was Austrian born. That's a lie. Or from Austria, rather. She's Californian born, but she's from Australia. I mean, they're practically next door, so you can appreciate why I would mess that up. It's nothing at all to do with the spelling and probably not sleeping that night. But that's a book that I would say is probably going to go under most people's radars. That is Rowan's first collection. She is, I mean, a great human being. I actually met her. I keep wanting to say last year, it feels like so long ago, but earlier this year in April at the Scares That Care AuthorCon out in Williamsburg, Virginia. If anybody ever gets an opportunity to go there, if you're into books, especially horror books, of course, and you love to help people that have suffered from terrible burn tragedies or have cancer, do it. Jake Lerner, Joe Ripple, Brian Keene, they're the big guys that put that on. So this is now their fourth convention that they're doing. They're going to be their fourth convention. They're actually up to about, I think, 3 a year of this thing now. Brian Keene just took a picture and given a cancer survivor, somebody's going through treatment right now, a $10,000 check. So I can't say enough about that. A lot of amazing people that go there that are really good people that want to help a good cause and share the love of horror books. So that's where I met Rowan Hill. Fantastic person, and she's one of those people where I met her and I thought, I want to know more about you and your work. So it just happened that she had this collection that was coming out, and I asked her, I said, I really want to review this book. So it's a collection of stories. They all have to do with female characters that are, they're the antagonists and in some cases protagonists, and all the stories. There's about 6 stories, I think, 6 or 7 stories, and they're absolutely brilliant. And I haven't heard a whole lot about this. So it was published maybe a few weeks ago. And when I say I haven't really heard a whole lot about it, I haven't heard anything about it, and that's a shame. I know that Rowan's been around for quite some time. She's not saying she's old. She's been writing for quite some time, mostly in short stories. I think she's got a novella out, and I feel a little embarrassed that I'm not grabbing it right now. But everybody watches, do yourself a favor and Google her. But no, she's fantastic. I mean, such a great author. I really enjoyed her stuff. This collection has to do with sci-fi horror, although there's a couple in there that are really folk, very folk related. And actually, just thinking too, if you go over onto Cemetery Dance in their interview section, I also interviewed Rowan Hill about her entire collection as well. So that's and that's something I will continue to do as well. Even though I'll be cut back on, or basically cut out doing reviews. If I read a great book, I'm going to be interviewing that person either on my own podcast or Cemetery Dance takes a lot of my interviews. I just can't help but not pick people's brains about stuff that I love, so I'll be doing that still. And Rowan was one of the ones that I did that with, and she's just a brilliant author. I'm so glad I came across her stuff. I mean, there's one story that she writes about, in particular, somebody in outer space that is essentially driven to madness by, the loneliness of it, the starkness of it. Nothing is just black and whites and grays and no colors. And this poor woman who is on this mission is desperate for some kind of, a flare of color, of life. And that's one of the things that I talked to about her, because I thought that this story in particular needs to be taught in schools and writing classes about this is what a story about isolation and loneliness is. If you want to write a story about isolation, read this book, study it. You'll know what an isolation story is really all about. And I just think that that's one of the stories that is fantastic. I think everybody should read that. It's such a good read. And most of the stories are pretty short too.
So you definitely got me on that list. So I'm definitely going to grab it.
Cool. Yeah, definitely look her up. She give Roland some love and her book some love, and the stories will love you back.
Now, Rick, my friend, where can anyone find you and your work?
Sure. So if you're looking to stalk me now, I would suggest I do have a link tree as well. So I will certainly make sure that Travis, you have the link as well. If you'd be so kind, would you drop it down below?
Down in the description.
That'd be amazing. A lot of my stuff, if you pick up a copy of Rumor magazine, that's where you find all of my reviews in there up until about March. And then they're just going to have to do without me for a few issues. I think they'll be fine. You can also go over to Cemetery Dance, where I do regular interviews. I actually have a little section over there called What Screams May Come, where I was doing weekly interviews, and then I thought, what the hell was I thinking? And then that went to every other, and now it's kind of sporadic. But hopefully I'll be able to add to that more as I cut down on my reviews. One of the reasons I want to cut down on reviews. I do also do reviews or my own podcast here, where I'll pick mostly authors' brains and filmmakers. You can actually go to that through darkbites.ca. Got a little mic here too, so
nice.
Darkbites.ca, and that'll put you right into my podcast as well. But make sure if you go to my podcast, you're also checking out, coming back to Travis's podcast as well, because I know you do some really good work too. So, but if you down there, maybe make me your second or third favorite podcast. Give it a try, yes. See what you think. Kick the can down the street.
Listen, and listen, I'm always down for collaborating with other podcasters too. So we can definitely talk. We can definitely do that in the future as well.
Well, that'd be great. I would love to pick your brain as well, because yes. I think it's fascinating that you're obviously positioned yourself as an awesome interviewer as well. And I mean, you picked, and then you had me and I think 3 other people on before we were talking to the DreadCon that was over here in Waterloo, Ontario. And you did a great job, moderating the panel, keeping us all hooligans kind of in check, and
yes.
Have a great, most linear conversation. And I think it's cool too, because you've also got a background in, you were a funeral director, I want to say.
I'm a funeral director and mortician, yes.
Mortician, yeah, and I think that's just fascinating to me. And I've talked to a few morticians, and man, they've got stories to tell. And the fact that you're also in horror, I would think that would make you run away from horror, and that maybe you'd be into comedies and things like that, not
maybe in yeah.
So I think to me that's just fascinating. So yeah, I would definitely love to reverse the roles and maybe have you on my podcast sometime and talk to you about that.
Let me know, because yes, 2025 I'm going, because not only am I a great interviewer, I'm a great interviewee. I'm great at being coming on other people's shows and having fun. Yeah. So I definitely, it's nice every once in a while to switch the roles.
It is nice. Yeah, kind of put all the pressure on. Well, it's funny because I think, well, this is great. I'm just going to relax. All the pressure's on you. I don't have to worry about all the questions. But of course, I didn't think about getting put in the hot seat and I got to answer some questions. And I appreciate that.
You think of your feet with me, man. You got to think of your feet with me, because I don't. By the way, if people think I use a script or something, no, I just usually think of these questions off the top of my head. Boom, 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 and it's just a natural talent.
And how do you find that too? Actually, I'm going to reverse the role a little bit on you, because I'm really curious to know what you think about this. Speaking of that, and that's what I typically do too, is I just kind of keep it all up here, and I figured if I don't already know what I want to talk about with somebody, I probably shouldn't be having that conversation, is my mindset. But the exception to that is the few times I've had a chance to chat with maybe some big-ass movie people or whatnot. I know when I was, for example, when I was doing the last voyage of the Demeter, I got a chance to talk to a few of the people from that, which was fantastic, like Andre Overdahl, Javier Botet, etc. I made sure, and of course, they only have a certain amount of time, because they've got handlers, and those handlers are watching there. They're on there with you too, and you don't want to use up too much of their time. And I'm always afraid of pissing them off. And they're like, okay, that's enough because I've got 20 other people lined up here. So that's one of the rare moments that I've written questions down ahead of time to make sure I can keep things concise. I don't know if you can tell, but sometimes I have a habit of running on a little bit and really diving into different things. So that way it keeps me kind of in check. But that's the only time I ever do that is if I'm chatting with sort of, big ass movie people that have handlers. And do you ever find the same thing for you too? If you're talking to people that make movies as opposed to maybe authors and that, do you find that it changes up your approach to asking questions?
Not really. I follow the guest mood, so I follow their energy. So depending on the guest, if I have a guest on and they are cursing and swearing, I'm cursing and swearing. If I have a guest on, it's like a bro dude, I turn to bro dude. If I have a guest who's a little more reserved, I become a little more reserved. So it depends on the guest. I match their energy. But for the most part, I mean, for me, I'm an introvert, but I force myself to be an extrovert.
Right.
Just in my life because introverts don't get any fun, So so I forced myself to be an extrovert, and in that I'm a good conversationalist. I can talk to anybody about literally anything, but being an introvert for decades is I became a great listener. So I listen to people, and from whatever you're saying. That's in my mind. I'm already thinking of 3 or 4 questions from what you say. So it's not necessarily I have questions in my mind. I toss out a question, and then from what you say, boom, boom, I'm coming up with 3 more questions from that answer.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. I think that really makes a big difference too in creating that organic environment or that organic conversation as well. I mean, I remember a bit ago, actually, something I'll be doing tomorrow. Hopefully release it on Friday, as I had a chance to chat with a guy, if you don't mind me name dropping a little bit, an author named Anthony Northrup. So he just did a sequel to Dollar Baby's books, Stephen King's Dollar Baby books, and I chatted with him before about the first one. So I'm thinking, I've already exhausted all my questions for this guy. I got maybe 2 questions that I want to lead in with. Other than that, I don't know what I'm going to talk to this guy about at all, but he's a great guy. I consider him a friend. You know what? It'll work itself out. And we started chatting, and it was funny because I think that podcast is about an hour and a half long. And then after we got off of that, we went on and sorry, not to make you afraid. You're like, okay, dude, I'm going to hit that X button. I'm running here now that you're going to warn me. But then after we stopped recording it, we ended up chatting for another hour or so after that, a couple hours.
I've done that.
Nothing ridiculous. So it's like, you just constantly bounce off of each other, and you never know where it's going to go. And it's, it's like the mouse who doesn't know where the cheese is, but you'll get it eventually.
See, and that's also makes a great guest. A great guest can teamwork. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah. I mean, have I had interviews that were tough? Yes, I've had several that were tough, and it's because I'm an introvert extrovert, but I'm talking to an extrovert. I mean, I'm talking to an introvert, and it's tough. It's tough if I'm talking to another introvert, because I like to ask questions, and then from there, people answer questions, and then I bounce off of their questions. So it's almost like I used to box. It's like I'm a counter puncher. Right. So it's boom, boom. So that's my interview style.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great interview style to have, and that's why I'm enjoying our conversations so much too, because I had no idea any of this stuff where it would go at all. So it's really cool. And yeah, it is tough when you've got that introvert because you're wondering, okay, number one, what are you doing here? And at the same time, it's like we got to have a sort of an ebb and flow going on. Otherwise, you got to give me something here because I'm trying to ham you up, but I can't do that if you're falling flat. I guess to use your analogy, it's like punching. Boxing's only exciting when the opponent gets back up after being knocked down and gives it back just as equally.
Exactly.
I mean, I've had interviews before where people put me on the spot and said, Rick, I'm going to put you. Actually, it was remember the first time it happened. I was chatting with the former one of the founders of Rumor Magazine, Rodrigo Guadino, about Guadino. That's right. I just chatted with him. I can hear his voice in my head now about something. I'm going to turn this around on you. What did you make out when this scene happened? What was your interpretation of this? And I was, dude, like, you're not supposed to ask me these questions. But it was fantastic because it went a completely different direction than I anticipated. I mean, I remember I was talking with one of the coolest ones was who was it? Braggy Shoot Jr. Who he did the original screenplay for the Demeter movie, and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. But movies I didn't even know he did had anything to do with that I enjoyed. And we got talking. Next, he showed me props that he's got of like the old, cane from Dracula and all kinds of different things. And he's like a kid in a candy shop, and he's, and I had no idea. So it's really fun when you get a guest like that as opposed to somebody, I was talking to somebody once and I accidentally interrupted them because I thought they were finished, but they're collecting their thoughts and they're, excuse me, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
And okay, you obviously have an agenda, so I'm just going to shut up and let you advertise the movie in whatever way you're maybe told to advertise the movie, and I'll just
Those are interviews too when someone just talks the whole entire time, and I've definitely had those. But for the most part, I can pretty much interview anyone. I mean, there's only been a handful of times that it's been a struggle trying to, but it's because especially. I'll tell you right now, one of my best interviews I've ever done. If you ever get a chance, I'm gonna name drop. He's an amazing author, indie horror author, and his book was #1 on Amazon for like one day. And Mark Allen. If you watch my interview with Mark Allen, it's like 2 hours long. It's ridiculously long, and we talked for another whole hour. But like, it's one of the greatest interviews because we're talking about real shit in life outside of the book, and like, it is one of the best interviews. I love having Mark on, but I think a lot of people see that 2 hour. I think they see that 2 hour limit. They're like, "Oh shit, I can't watch that."
Well, it's funny because I always wondered the same thing too, and also for some of my podcasts, I think, okay, I'm going to start to forcefully, see which end we get this time. I'm going to forcefully cut this off at about half an hour, and of course, let the guest know ahead. So we're going to go for about half an hour. Meanwhile, I could go a lot longer than that, but say, okay, here's the half hour, so I guess I'll wrap this up kind of now, thinking that's more digestible and it's better for interviewers or for the people watch this. But then I did a few of those and I thought, I don't like being in a can. Like, forget this. Let's just do whatever we want to do. Because then I think back to some of these, whether or not you like him or not, I don't. Joe Rogan will go on for 3 hours. Jocko Willits is a great guy. He's a Navy SEAL, talks a lot of vets. He'll go on for 3, sometimes 4 hours. And it doesn't seem to hurt the readership. So I think, just a good conversation is a good conversation, I suppose.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, I listen to Howard Stern, and he goes on for 2 or 3 hours with his interviews, and I don't check out. So like, yes, there's a, I was just talking to a filmmaker earlier about like attention span. Like, of course, like I can look at my one thing that's great about YouTube. I can look at my analytics and see exactly who's watching my channel. And like that 18 to 23-year-old, they don't watch, and it's because it's too long. They're looking for something quick, fast, boom, boom, boom. And like, so, but I recognize that's not my market. That's not my audience.
Sure.
So.
See, I'm all about, to plug my book again, one of the things that I talk about in it, and I think it's so important for anybody to do, especially if you're grinding it out as a, freelance writer, I think especially, you've got to double dip as much as possible. Why get paid for something once when you can get paid for it multiple times is my thing. So what I'll do too, and maybe for people listening to this too, because they might think, maybe they'll read this and they'll think, hey, I'm going to read reviews. This guy Rick said I can make a lot of money doing that. And then they find out, no, you're really not. I mean, a lot of the payment that I get is I've got a bunch of physical art books, when they used to do that, but especially up in Canada, shipping costs is ridiculous. You think they literally put on the back of a moose, slip a few $100s in it's wherever it fits and slap it on the ass and hope for the best kind of thing because it's so expensive. So most publishers will give out digital copies, which is great, but I like holding something and I value them. So that's a big payment factor for me, not to mention the enjoyment of that. So one of the things that I know that I do, for example, is speaking of Joe Rogan, I kind of steal his tactic where he'll do all the mini clips. So I'll do a full hour and a half, whatever long it is, interview with somebody, and I'll try to find maybe 2 or 3 really key things, and I'm like, that's the big highlight for that, or man, that's a holy crap moment kind of thing, or I really enjoyed that part. And I'll find a way to get that into maybe like a 6 to 8 minute clip sort of thing. And then I may put some extra B-roll in it, fancy it up a bit, and then I'll post that up. So it's the same interview, but I think that it caters to maybe a different audience that likes that, like you said, like those 23-year-olds. And by the way, if you're 23 and you're watching this, I'm not saying that your attention span is minuscule, but it might be. I mean, mine is
It
too.
is.
That's just the way it is. Sorry, that's stats don't lie kind of thing, and that is the majority of it. And I find that's kind of a nice way of being able to cater to the people like that just kind of want their quick hits and kind of on with their day sort of thing. So it's kind of a neat thing to do that. And then I'll also, I don't know if you do this, Travis, but then I'll often transcribe those interviews, and then I'll try to find publications that might want to buy those interviews as well, because it's just a different audience, and I usually truncate them down a little bit too, so people can kind of work them that way. I'm all about making that.
I mean, all those things are things I'm definitely in the works of doing, especially the clips. I mean, I see a lot more people they're taking tidbits out of the interview. They post a full length and they put little tidbits of key points and make videos, and they get paid off those videos too. So like that's getting paid over and over again. So it's always good.
Exactly, and I think that you can have fun with it too. I find, because at least for me, if you got the smaller ones, again, you can put in some B-roll images, things like that you might not do for a full-length interview, which I used to do, and then after a while I thought, Jesus, this is just like sucking life out of me here. And so much time I've wasted, like 10 years of my life doing this stuff, it feels like. And then I found that by not doing it, it doesn't seem to make a difference. And a lot of times they'll put clips up there why they do just as well as a full-length interview. And sometimes they do a lot better, except now I've got 3 of these little clips that each one's doing just as well or better. So that overall I end up attracting a lot more viewers that way. And I've got a really small channel as well. I mean, I'm under 400 subscribers, and I've been grinding it for 3 years. So it's there's obviously something I'm not, and it's okay. I don't need to be the Joe Rogan or Howard Stern at all. I've got my little niche and my audience and stuff out there. So, but yeah, I do find that's a nice way to kind of reach more people that way.
I agree. Listen, Rick, this has always been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Listen, man. Listen, we got to collaborate, man. If you want me to come on your channel, I'll come on your channel. If you want to do something on my channel, you can do something on my channel, man. You got a free ring.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. The plots begin. Awesome. No, I really appreciate that, Travis, and we definitely have to chat again.
Most definitely. And listen, everybody, Rick's Linktree is down in the description, so please click on it. Please grab your copy of Guide to Writing Book Reviews.
We had to get paid for them.
And yes, getting paid for them, but not getting rich off them.
Yes. Exactly. Maybe rich in the soul, but not in the pockets.
Yes. All right, everyone. Well, listen, thank you for coming to this edition. For everybody who's older than 23, thank you for coming to this edition of a Horror Room. I'm Travis Bruce, and that's my man, Rick Hipson.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Travis.
You too, my friend. We'll see you next time. Take care.